Humility is often misunderstood. Some believe it means thinking little of oneself, lacking confidence, or being submissive. But true humility is not about lowering yourself. It is about seeing things as they truly are. It is about recognizing that you are neither above nor below anyone else, but simply a part of the vast web of existence. In our modern world, people are encouraged to stand out, to prove their worth, and to compete for recognition. Success is often measured by how much one achieves, how much one owns, or how much influence one has over others. But this way of thinking creates suffering. It builds walls between people, fuels insecurity, and leads to a constant struggle to maintain an image of superiority. True humility frees us from this struggle. It is not about denying our abilities or achievements, but about understanding that they do not define our true worth. A humble person does not seek praise or validation. Instead, they understand that all things are interconnected and that nothing is permanent. This understanding brings peace. Imagine a great tree in a forest. It stands tall, providing shade and shelter, yet it does not boast about its height or its strength. It simply grows, deeply rooted in the earth, sharing space with the other trees. It does not compare itself to the trees around it. It does not seek to be the tallest or the most admired. In this way, it is a perfect example of humility, strong yet unassuming, present yet without pride. Practicing humility means letting go of the need to be better than others. It means being open to learning, willing to listen, and unafraid of admitting mistakes. A humble person does not see themselves as superior, nor do they see themselves as unworthy. They simply exist in balance, aware that every being has value, and that wisdom comes not from dominance, but from understanding. When we embrace humility, we stop feeling the need to prove ourselves. We no longer feel threatened by others' success. We begin to see the beauty in every person and every moment, without judgment or envy. This is the beginning of true peace. Many people mistake humility for weakness. They believe that to be humble means to be passive, to lack confidence, or to allow others to take advantage of you. But true humility is not weakness. It is a great inner strength. It requires courage to set aside pride, to admit when we are wrong, and to treat others with kindness, even when they do not do the same for us. A person ruled by pride reacts with anger when criticized. They feel the need to defend themselves, to prove they are right, or to show their superiority. But a humble person does not react with such tension. They listen calmly, without feeling the need to fight. This does not mean they agree with every criticism, but they are strong enough to consider it without fear. This kind of self-control is a sign of deep inner strength. In many traditions, warriors were taught humility before they were taught how to fight. This was not to make them weak, but to give them discipline. A warrior who lacks humility is reckless, ruled by emotion, and easily defeated by their own arrogance. But a warrior with humility is steady, patient, and wise. They do not waste energy on unnecessary battles. They do not fight to prove their worth. They understand that true power is not in defeating others, but in mastering themselves. In daily life, we also face challenges that test our humility. When someone disagrees with us, do we respond with anger or with understanding? When we achieve something great, do we use it to lift others up or to elevate ourselves? When we make mistakes, do we blame others or take responsibility? These moments reveal our true strength. A truly strong person does not need to show off their strength. They do not seek recognition or control over others. Instead, they remain steady in all situations, knowing that their worth is not determined by praise or power. This quiet strength creates a deep and lasting peace, one that cannot be shaken by the opinions of others. When we cultivate humility, we discover that we do not need to prove anything. We stop being controlled by our ego and start living with a sense of calm confidence. This is the kind of strength that brings true freedom. One of the greatest barriers to inner peace is the ego. The ego constantly seeks recognition, validation, and control. It wants to be admired, to be right, and to be superior. But in this endless pursuit, we create suffering for ourselves and others. True humility allows us to let go of this struggle and find peace in simply being. The ego makes us believe that we must always defend our identity. If someone criticizes us, we feel attacked. If someone achieves more than us, we feel threatened. If we fail, we feel ashamed. But all of these reactions come from the same illusion, the belief that our worth depends on how we are seen by others. In reality, our true self is not something that can be measured by success, reputation, or status. It is something deeper, something beyond the reach of praise or criticism. Letting go of ego does not mean denying our individuality. It does not mean we should not have goals or take pride in our efforts. It simply means that we do not allow these things to control our happiness. When we stop identifying so strongly with our achievements, failures, and opinions, we become lighter. We no longer feel the need to compete. We no longer feel the pressure to prove ourselves. Imagine holding a heavy stone in your hand. The longer you hold it, the more painful it becomes. But the moment you decide to release it, you feel relief. The weight disappears. This is what happens when we let go of ego. We free ourselves from unnecessary suffering. When we meet someone who disagrees with us, the ego wants to argue and prove that we are right. But humility allows us to listen, to understand, and to remain calm. When we experience failure, the ego feels shame. But humility allows us to learn and move forward without fear. When we achieve something great, the ego wants to be praised. But humility allows us to enjoy the moment without becoming attached to it. This is the secret to inner peace. When we let go of ego, we stop being controlled by external things. We become more open, more present, and more at ease. We no longer chase after recognition or fear being ignored. We simply live, free from the endless struggle to be someone. And in this freedom, we discover a deep and lasting peace. Humility is not just an idea. It is something we practice every day. It is in the way we speak, the way we listen, and the way we respond to the world around us. It is not found in grand gestures, but in small, ordinary moments. When we cultivate humility in daily life, we create space for peace, kindness, and true connection with others. One of the simplest ways to practice humility is through listening. Often, when someone speaks to us, we are not truly listening. We are waiting for our turn to talk, thinking about what we will say next, or judging their words in our mind. But a humble person listens with full attention. They are not focused on proving themselves or appearing wise. They listen because they genuinely want to understand. Humility also appears in how we treat others, especially those we do not usually notice. It is easy to be kind to those who can benefit us, or those we admire. But true humility means showing the same respect to everyone, whether they are powerful or ordinary, rich or poor, familiar or a stranger. A humble person does not think of themselves as more important than others. They treat all beings with dignity. Another way to practice humility is by accepting help. Many people find it difficult to receive help from others because they want to be seen as independent and strong. But humility allows us to recognize that we all need support. It takes strength to admit that we cannot do everything alone. When we allow others to help us, we create deeper relationships based on trust and gratitude. Humility also helps us handle mistakes. No one is perfect, but the ego resists admitting fault. It wants to protect our pride, even if it means making excuses or blaming others. But a humble person can say, "I was wrong." They do not see mistakes as a weakness, but as an opportunity to learn. This openness allows them to grow without fear. Every day, we are given opportunities to practice humility. It is in the way we treat the person who serves our food, the way we react when someone disagrees with us, and the way we acknowledge the contributions of others. When we choose humility, we create harmony in our relationships and peace within ourselves. It is not about making ourselves small. It is about being free from the need to be big. In this freedom, we find true contentment. One of the greatest obstacles to humility is the belief that we are somehow superior to others. This illusion takes many forms. We may feel superior because of our intelligence, our achievements, our wealth, or even our morality. But the moment we see ourselves as above others, we create separation. This separation leads to conflict, judgment, and ultimately, suffering. Superiority is an illusion because everything in life is temporary. The things we take pride in today may be gone tomorrow. Intelligence fades, achievements are forgotten, and wealth can disappear. Even the values we hold may change over time. When we attach our identity to these things, we build our sense of self on something unstable. True humility comes when we realize that nothing makes us inherently better or worse than another person. Consider a drop of water in the ocean. It may seem separate, unique, or even more important than other drops. But in reality, it is part of the vast ocean, just like all the others. If it tries to stand apart, it loses its true nature. In the same way, when we believe we are above others, we lose our connection to the whole. The illusion of superiority also creates suffering because it distances us from true wisdom. When we think we already know everything, we stop learning. When we believe we are better than others, we stop growing. A humble person remains open, knowing that every person they meet has something to teach them. Even a child, even a stranger, even someone they disagree with. Each has wisdom that we may not yet understand. How do we recognize and overcome this illusion in daily life? The first step is awareness. When we find ourselves judging someone, we can pause and ask, "What makes me believe I am better?" When we feel the need to prove our superiority, we can ask, "Why do I need this recognition?" These small moments of reflection help us loosen the grip of ego. The second step is gratitude. Instead of focusing on how we compare to others, we can appreciate what we have and what others bring into our lives. Gratitude shifts our attention from competition to connection, from pride to appreciation. Humility does not mean thinking less of ourselves. It means seeing ourselves clearly. It means understanding that no one is above or below another. When we release the illusion of superiority, we free ourselves from the burden of comparison and find true peace in simply being. Arrogance is one of the greatest barriers to personal and spiritual growth. It keeps us trapped in a false sense of superiority, preventing us from learning, improving, and connecting deeply with others. While confidence helps us move forward, arrogance holds us back by making us believe we already know enough, that we are already better than others, and that we have nothing left to learn. A person ruled by arrogance resists new perspectives. When someone offers advice or correction, they immediately reject it. They may see feedback as an attack rather than an opportunity to grow. This mindset keeps them stuck, unable to improve, because they refuse to acknowledge their own limitations. True wisdom comes from the ability to listen, reflect, and change when necessary. Arrogance also damages relationships. When we see ourselves as superior, we unconsciously look down on others. We may interrupt when they speak, dismiss their experiences, or fail to appreciate their contributions. Over time, this creates distance and resentment. People feel unheard, unvalued, and disrespected. A humble person, on the other hand, listens with an open heart. They recognize that every person they meet has something valuable to share. One of the most dangerous aspects of arrogance is that it often blinds us to our own faults. The more we believe we are superior, the harder it is to admit when we are wrong. We may make excuses, blame others, or avoid situations that challenge our self-image. But avoiding the truth does not make us stronger. It only keeps us weak. Growth comes from facing our imperfections honestly and having the courage to improve. A wise person understands that no matter how much they know, there is always more to learn. They do not fear being wrong because they see mistakes as opportunities. They do not need to prove themselves because they know that true confidence comes from self-awareness, not from comparison. To overcome arrogance, we must practice humility every day. This means being willing to listen, being open to correction, and reminding ourselves that every person, no matter their background, has wisdom to offer. It means letting go of the need to be right all the time, and embracing the idea that learning is a lifelong journey. When we release arrogance, we make room for growth. We open ourselves to new experiences, deeper relationships, and greater wisdom. In humility, we find not weakness, but true strength. The strength to keep learning, to keep growing, and to walk the path of life with openness and peace. Mistakes are a natural part of life. No one is perfect, and no one can go through life without making errors. However, how we respond to our mistakes determines our growth and inner peace. A person ruled by pride sees mistakes as failures, something to hide or deny. But a humble person sees them as teachers, guiding them toward wisdom and self-improvement. When we make a mistake, the ego reacts with fear. It does not want to admit fault because it sees failure as a sign of weakness. It may try to shift blame, make excuses, or pretend the mistake never happened. But avoiding responsibility does not erase the mistake. It only delays our growth. A humble person, on the other hand, acknowledges their errors with honesty. They are not afraid to say, "I was wrong." Instead of seeing mistakes as something shameful, they view them as opportunities to learn. Some of the greatest lessons in life come from our failures. Think about a child learning to walk. They fall many times, but they do not give up. Each time they fall, they learn something new about balance, about movement, about their own body. If they feared failure, they would never take another step. In the same way, when we embrace mistakes with humility, we allow ourselves to grow stronger and wiser. One of the most valuable aspects of humility is the ability to apologize. Saying "I'm sorry" is not a sign of weakness. It is a sign of strength. It shows that we value truth more than our pride. It shows that we care about the feelings of others, and that we are willing to correct our path. A person who refuses to apologize may think they are protecting their image, but in reality, they are only creating distance and distrust. Another important part of learning from mistakes is forgiveness, not only for others, but also for ourselves. Many people carry deep regret for past mistakes, replaying them in their minds and wishing they could change the past. But humility teaches us to accept our imperfections. We cannot go back and erase what has been done, but we can choose to grow from it. When we forgive ourselves, we release unnecessary suffering and create space for a new beginning. In life, mistakes will always happen. But with a humble heart, we can transform them into wisdom. When we stop fearing failure and start learning from it, we walk the path of true growth. And in this growth, we find peace, not because we are perfect, but because we are always willing to learn. True wisdom does not come from knowledge alone. It comes from the ability to see things clearly, without the distortion of ego or pride. A wise person understands that learning never ends, that every experience has something to teach, and that no one has all the answers. This is why humility and wisdom are deeply connected. One cannot exist without the other. A person who lacks humility believes they already know enough. They cling to their opinions, resist new perspectives, and dismiss those who think differently. This attitude creates stagnation. When we assume we have nothing left to learn, we close the door to growth. A truly wise person, however, remains open. They are willing to question their own beliefs, to listen with curiosity, and to accept that they may be wrong. Humility also allows us to learn from everyone, not just from so-called experts. Sometimes, the greatest wisdom comes from unexpected places. A child's innocent question, a stranger's passing comment, or a simple moment in nature. But if we are too proud to listen, we miss these lessons. A humble person does not judge where wisdom comes from. They receive it with gratitude. Another connection between humility and wisdom is the ability to say, "I don't know." Many people fear these words because they see them as a sign of weakness. But in reality, they are a sign of strength. Pretending to know everything only leads to ignorance, while admitting what we do not know opens the door to real understanding. The wisest people are not those who claim to have all the answers, but those who continuously seek deeper truth. Humility also teaches us to observe, rather than react. When we are quick to judge, quick to assume, or quick to defend ourselves, we act from ego, not wisdom. But when we practice humility, we pause. We take time to understand before responding. This simple act of patience allows us to make better choices, to speak with kindness, and to act with wisdom instead of impulse. One of the greatest illusions in life is the belief that we are separate from others. The more we think of ourselves as superior, the more we isolate ourselves. But wisdom reminds us that we are all connected, that no one is above or below another, and that true understanding comes not from elevating ourselves, but from seeing clearly. When we cultivate humility, we allow wisdom to grow within us. We free ourselves from the need to always be right, to always be in control, or to always prove our worth. Instead, we walk the path of lifelong learning, knowing that every moment, every person, and every experience has something to teach us. And in this way, humility leads us to true wisdom. Our words and actions reflect our inner state. A person who speaks with arrogance or acts with superiority reveals an attachment to ego. In contrast, a person who speaks and acts with humility shows a deep understanding of life's interconnected nature. True humility is not just a belief or a thought. It is expressed through the way we communicate and interact with others. How we speak matters. When we speak with humility, we do not try to dominate conversations or prove that we are the most knowledgeable. We do not interrupt or dismiss others' opinions simply because they are different from our own. A humble person listens carefully before speaking. They do not speak just to impress, but to contribute meaningfully. Their words do not create division, but encourage understanding. A humble person also avoids exaggeration and self-promotion. In a world where many feel the need to constantly highlight their achievements or seek validation, humility allows us to step back. This does not mean we deny our accomplishments, but we do not use them to elevate ourselves above others. We let our actions speak for themselves rather than seeking praise. Equally important is how we act. True humility is seen in the small, everyday choices we make. Holding the door open for a stranger, offering a kind word, or giving someone our full attention without distraction. These actions may seem simple, but they have a powerful effect. They show that we do not see ourselves as more important than those around us. Humility is also reflected in how we handle disagreements. When we are challenged or criticized, do we react with anger and defensiveness? Or do we pause, listen, and consider whether there is truth in what is being said? A humble person does not feel the need to win an argument. They do not see conversation as a battle, but as an opportunity to learn and understand. One of the greatest expressions of humility is treating all people with equal respect, regardless of their status, background, or opinions. It is easy to be kind to those we admire, but true humility is shown when we treat everyone with the same level of respect and dignity, even when no one is watching. In the end, humility in speech and actions creates harmony. It strengthens relationships, reduces conflict, and brings peace within ourselves. When we speak with kindness and act with humility, we do not lose anything. Instead, we gain something far greater, a life of sincerity, connection, and inner calm. In a world filled with noise, silence is often overlooked. Many people believe that speaking makes them appear wise, strong, or important. They rush to express their opinions, to share their thoughts, and to prove their knowledge. But true wisdom is not found in constant speech. It is found in silence and deep listening. A humble person understands the power of both. Listening is more than simply hearing words. It is the act of giving someone our full attention, without judgment or interruption. When we truly listen, we are not thinking about how to respond, how to defend ourselves, or how to prove our point. We are fully present with the other person. This type of listening is rare, but it has the power to heal, to connect, and to transform relationships. Why is listening an act of humility? Because it requires us to set aside our ego. It means recognizing that we do not have all the answers, that others have wisdom to share, and that every person's experience is valuable. A humble person listens not to argue, but to understand. They do not listen with the goal of responding, but with the intention of learning. Silence also teaches humility. Many people feel uncomfortable with silence, rushing to fill it with words. But silence is not emptiness, it is space for reflection. When we embrace silence, we become more aware of our thoughts, our emotions, and the deeper truths that cannot be spoken. A humble person does not fear silence because they do not need constant validation. They find peace in stillness. In many spiritual traditions, silence is considered a path to wisdom. Monks, sages, and great teachers often spend long periods in silence, not because they have nothing to say, but because they understand that true insight comes not from speaking, but from deep observation. The more we cultivate silence, the more we begin to hear what is truly important, not just the words of others, but the quiet truths within ourselves. Practicing humility in listening and silence means resisting the urge to always be the one speaking. It means allowing others to have a voice, giving them space to express themselves without interruption. It means being comfortable with moments of quiet, knowing that wisdom does not always need to be spoken aloud. When we listen with humility, we build trust. When we embrace silence, we gain clarity. In both, we find a kind of peace that cannot be achieved through endless words. True understanding does not come from speaking more. It comes from listening deeply. Humility is one of the most powerful qualities in building strong, meaningful relationships. When we approach others with humility, we create connections based on respect, understanding, and trust. In contrast, when pride and ego dominate our interactions, relationships become filled with conflict, competition, and distance. At the heart of humility is the ability to see others as equals, not above us, not below us, but as fellow human beings on the same journey. This perspective changes the way we interact. We no longer seek to control or impress others. Instead, we focus on building genuine connections. A humble person does not see relationships as a way to gain status or prove their worth. They see them as an opportunity to share, learn, and grow together. One of the greatest challenges in relationships is handling disagreement. When two people have different opinions, the ego often reacts with defensiveness. It wants to be right, to win the argument, or to prove its superiority. But humility allows us to approach disagreements differently. Instead of focusing on who is right, we focus on understanding. We listen instead of interrupting. We ask questions instead of making accusations. We recognize that we may not have all the answers, and we remain open to learning from the other person. Humility also helps us in moments of conflict. When someone offends us, our first reaction may be anger or resentment. But if we respond with humility, we pause before reacting. We try to see the situation from the other person's perspective. We ask ourselves, is my pride creating unnecessary suffering? Instead of seeking revenge or holding grudges, we choose patience and understanding. This does not mean we allow others to treat us unfairly, but we do not let our ego turn small disagreements into lasting divisions. Another way humility strengthens relationships is through appreciation. Many relationships suffer not because of major problems, but because people take each other for granted. A humble person does not assume that love, kindness, or friendship are things they are entitled to. They express gratitude for the people in their lives. They acknowledge the efforts of others, no matter how small. This simple act of appreciation deepens bonds and creates a sense of mutual respect. Finally, humility allows us to apologize when we are wrong. Many relationships are damaged not by mistakes, but by the refusal to admit them. Pride makes it difficult to say, "I was wrong," or "I'm sorry." But a humble person understands that apologizing does not make them weak. It makes them stronger. It shows that they value the relationship more than their pride. When we bring humility into our relationships, we experience less conflict and more understanding. We build deeper trust and stronger connections. In the end, humility is not about lowering ourselves. It is about lifting others up and creating harmony in the way we relate to the world. Criticism is something we all experience. Sometimes it comes from those who care about us, offering guidance to help us grow. Other times, it comes from those who misunderstand or judge us unfairly. Regardless of where it comes from, how we respond to criticism reveals a great deal about our inner state. A person ruled by ego reacts with anger, denial, or defensiveness. But a humble person faces criticism with a calm mind, using it as an opportunity for growth. When we hear criticism, our first instinct is often to protect ourselves. The ego does not like to be questioned. It sees criticism as an attack and immediately prepares a defense. But if we pause before reacting, we can see the situation more clearly. Not all criticism is meant to harm us. Some of it contains truth, even if it is difficult to hear. A humble person listens carefully before responding. They ask themselves, is there something valuable in these words? Can I learn from this? Humility allows us to separate our self-worth from our mistakes. Just because we are criticized does not mean we are unworthy. It does not mean we are failures. It simply means there is something to reflect on. When we remove pride from the equation, we see criticism as information rather than a personal attack. This shift in perspective brings great inner peace. Of course, not all criticism is fair or useful. Sometimes people criticize out of jealousy, misunderstanding, or their own pain. In these cases, humility helps us let go of unnecessary suffering. We do not have to accept every negative word spoken about us. A humble person knows when to listen and when to simply move on. They do not waste energy defending themselves against unfair judgments. Instead, they focus on living with integrity, knowing that their actions will speak for themselves. Another important aspect of humility is learning to give criticism with kindness. If we must correct someone, do we do it with the intention to help? Or do we do it to make ourselves feel superior? A humble person corrects with compassion, not arrogance. They speak in a way that encourages growth, not in a way that humiliates or discourages others. In the end, how we handle criticism shapes our path. If we resist it out of pride, we remain stuck. If we welcome it with humility, we continue to grow. A person who can accept feedback without fear, who can reflect without defensiveness, and who can improve without resentment, is truly strong. When we face criticism with a calm mind, we transform it from something painful into something valuable. And in that transformation, we find wisdom and peace. Many people think of leadership as a position of power, someone who commands, controls, and makes decisions from above. But true leadership is not about domination. It is about service. The best leaders are not those who seek to elevate themselves, but those who humbly guide, support, and inspire others. Humility is what makes leadership not only effective, but also meaningful. A humble leader does not see themselves as more important than the people they lead. They understand that leadership is a responsibility, not a privilege. Instead of seeking recognition, they focus on the well-being of those they serve. They listen carefully, value different perspectives, and make decisions that benefit the whole, not just themselves. One of the most powerful traits of a humble leader is the ability to admit mistakes. Many leaders fear showing weakness, believing they must always appear confident and right. But a true leader understands that no one is perfect. When they make an error, they do not hide it or shift blame. They acknowledge it and work to correct it. This honesty builds trust and creates an environment where others also feel safe to learn and grow. Another sign of humility in leadership is the willingness to learn. Arrogant leaders believe they already know everything, that their way is the only way. But humble leaders remain open to new ideas. They understand that wisdom is not something they possess alone. It is something that can be found in the experiences and insights of others. They surround themselves with people who challenge them, rather than those who simply agree. Humility also changes the way a leader communicates. Instead of speaking to impress, they speak to encourage. Instead of demanding obedience, they inspire cooperation. They do not use their position to control, but to empower. A humble leader lifts others up, recognizing and celebrating their contributions instead of seeking attention for themselves. This kind of leadership creates loyalty and respect. People are drawn to leaders who genuinely care, who listen, and who put the needs of the group above their own pride. A humble leader does not need to force authority. People naturally trust and follow them because they lead with sincerity. In every aspect of life, whether in a workplace, a community, or even within a family, leadership rooted in humility creates harmony. It removes the struggle for power and replaces it with a shared purpose. It encourages growth, fosters cooperation, and builds strong, lasting relationships. The greatest leaders in history were not those who ruled with arrogance, but those who served with humility. They understood that true leadership is not about being at the top. It is about lifting others up. And in that selfless act, they found not only success, but also peace. Life is constantly changing. Nothing stays the same. Our circumstances, our relationships, even our own thoughts and emotions shift over time. Yet many people struggle against this natural flow. They try to control everything, to hold on to success, to resist change, or to shape the world according to their desires. This struggle creates stress and suffering. But humility teaches us a different way, to move with life rather than against it. A humble person does not fight against change. They understand that just as the seasons shift, so too does life. When good fortune comes, they accept it with gratitude, knowing it is not permanent. When difficulties arise, they face them with patience, knowing they too will pass. This acceptance brings peace. It frees us from the exhausting need to control every outcome. One of the greatest causes of suffering is attachment, to our achievements, to our reputation, to the way things used to be. The ego clings tightly, fearing loss. But humility allows us to let go. It reminds us that we do not own anything permanently. Not our success, not our possessions, not even our identities. Everything we have is borrowed for a time, and when the time comes to release it, we do so with grace. Consider a river flowing toward the ocean. It does not resist, it does not try to change its course. It moves naturally, adjusting to obstacles, finding a way forward. When we embrace humility, we become like the river. We stop resisting life and instead learn to move with it. This does not mean we give up on our dreams or stop making efforts. It simply means we do our best and trust that life will unfold as it should. Humility also helps us in relationships. When we expect others to behave in a certain way, we set ourselves up for disappointment. But when we accept people as they are, without trying to control them, we experience greater harmony. A humble person does not force their will onto others. They understand that each person has their own path, and they respect that journey. Another lesson of humility is recognizing that we are not the center of the universe. The world does not exist to serve our desires. Nature moves at its own rhythm, and we are just one part of it. This realization does not make us small. It makes us free. When we stop trying to control the uncontrollable, we find a deep and lasting peace. Living with humility means trusting the flow of life. It means understanding that we are not in control of everything, and that is okay. When we embrace this truth, we experience less fear, less frustration, and more joy. Instead of clinging to what was, or fearing what will be, we simply live, present in each moment, flowing with life, rather than struggling against it. And in that flow, we find true peace. Humility is not something we achieve instantly. It is a lifelong practice. Just as a tree grows slowly, strengthening its roots over time, humility deepens within us as we continue to learn and reflect. It is a mindset we must nurture daily through our thoughts, our actions, and the way we respond to life's challenges. One of the first steps in cultivating humility is self-awareness. We must be honest with ourselves about our thoughts and reactions. Do we seek praise? Do we feel the need to prove ourselves? Do we compare ourselves to others? Recognizing these tendencies does not mean we should judge ourselves harshly. It simply means we have the opportunity to grow. When we notice pride arising, we can gently remind ourselves to step back and see the bigger picture. Another practice that strengthens humility is gratitude. When we appreciate what we have, rather than focusing on what we lack, we naturally become more humble. We see that much of what we have in life is not just our own doing. Our successes are shaped by the support of others, by circumstances, by luck, and by forces beyond our control. Gratitude helps us let go of the illusion that we alone are responsible for our achievements. It teaches us to recognize the contributions of others and to feel a deep sense of appreciation rather than superiority. Humility also grows when we seek to serve rather than to be served. In everyday life, this means shifting our focus from ourselves to others. It can be as simple as offering a kind word, helping without expecting recognition, or truly listening when someone speaks. Small acts of service remind us that we are all connected and that life is not just about personal success, but about how we contribute to the world around us. Patience is another key part of a humble mindset. When things do not go as planned, when we face delays or disappointments, humility allows us to accept them with grace. Instead of reacting with frustration or trying to force things to happen our way, we learn to trust the process. A humble person understands that life unfolds in its own time and that we are not always in control. Finally, humility is strengthened when we surround ourselves with people who inspire us to grow. Being around those who are wise, kind, and open-minded encourages us to be the same. We learn from their example, and we remain open to receiving their insights and perspectives. A humble person does not fear learning from others. They welcome it. Cultivating humility is not about diminishing ourselves. It is about expanding our understanding. It is about living with openness, gratitude, and a willingness to learn. Over time, as we continue to practice humility, we experience a profound inner shift. We become more at peace with ourselves, more connected with others, and more in tune with the flow of life. And in that journey, we find not just wisdom, but true contentment. Many people hesitate to embrace humility because they fear it will make them less powerful, less important, less respected. In a world that often rewards self-promotion, confidence, and dominance, humility can seem like a weakness. But this is an illusion. True humility does not make us smaller. It makes us freer. It allows us to live without the constant pressure to prove ourselves, without the fear of failure, and without the need to be above others. The fear of being less often comes from the ego. The ego tells us that if we do not assert ourselves, we will be ignored. It tells us that if we admit mistakes, we will lose respect. It convinces us that if we do not compete, we will fall behind. But these fears are built on insecurity. A truly strong person does not need to prove their worth. They already know it. And humility is the sign of a person who is truly secure in themselves. Humility does not mean thinking poorly of ourselves. It does not mean allowing others to take advantage of us or failing to recognize our own abilities. Instead, it means seeing ourselves honestly, acknowledging both our strengths and our limitations without attachment or pride. It means understanding that our value does not come from external success, status, or the opinions of others. One way to overcome the fear of being less is to shift our focus. Instead of worrying about how we are perceived, we can focus on what truly matters: how we treat others, how we grow, and how we contribute to the world around us. When we stop seeking validation from outside sources, we become free. We no longer need to fight for attention or recognition because we find contentment in simply being. Another way to let go of this fear is by embracing imperfection. No one is perfect, yet many people spend their lives trying to appear flawless. They hide their weaknesses, avoid admitting mistakes, and constantly compare themselves to others. But humility teaches us that it is okay to be imperfect. In fact, it is in our imperfections that we find real connection with others. When we are honest about our struggles, we allow others to be honest as well. This creates deeper, more meaningful relationships based on authenticity rather than competition. Letting go of the fear of being less also means accepting that we do not need to control everything. Many people seek power not because they truly want it, but because they are afraid of being powerless. But true strength comes from inner stability, not from dominance over others. A humble person does not fear losing status because they do not base their worth on status in the first place. In the end, humility is not about making ourselves small. It is about freeing ourselves from the illusions of the ego. It is about recognizing that we do not need to be the loudest, the most admired, or the most powerful to live a meaningful life. When we let go of the fear of being less, we find something far greater: peace, authenticity, and a deep connection to the world around us. Many people spend their lives searching for peace. They seek it in success, in wealth, in recognition, or in the approval of others. Yet no matter how much they achieve, true peace always seems just out of reach. This is because real peace does not come from external achievements. It comes from within. And one of the most powerful ways to cultivate inner peace is through humility. Humility frees us from the burdens that disturb our minds. When we let go of the need to be right, we no longer waste energy on endless arguments. When we stop comparing ourselves to others, we release jealousy and insecurity. When we no longer seek constant praise, we are no longer affected by criticism. In humility, we find the ability to remain steady, no matter what happens around us. A person ruled by ego experiences constant inner conflict. Their happiness depends on success, on status, on how others perceive them. When things go well, they feel superior. When things go poorly, they feel unworthy. This cycle creates stress and suffering. But a humble person is free from this trap. They do not need to prove themselves to anyone. Their peace is not built on external conditions, but on a deep understanding that they are already enough, just as they are. Humility also allows us to forgive more easily. When we hold on to anger, resentment, or the desire to be above someone who has wronged us, we carry a heavy burden. But when we practice humility, we recognize that we too have made mistakes, that we too have been wrong at times. This understanding makes forgiveness natural, and in forgiveness we find peace, not only with others, but also within ourselves. Another way humility leads to peace is by helping us accept life as it is. Many people suffer because they resist reality. They wish things were different. They fight against change. They struggle to control what cannot be controlled. But humility teaches us that we are not the masters of the universe. We do not control everything, and we do not need to. When we surrender to the flow of life, we stop fighting unnecessary battles. We learn to accept what comes with grace, and we find a deep sense of peace in that acceptance. Living with humility also strengthens our relationships. When we treat others with respect and kindness, when we listen instead of argue, when we acknowledge that we are not always right, we create harmony in our interactions. A life filled with humble relationships is a life free from unnecessary conflict. In the end, humility is not just a virtue, It is a path to freedom. It frees us from the need to impress, the need to control, and the need to be above others. It allows us to live with ease, to appreciate the present moment, and to find contentment in simply being. True peace is not something we chase. It is something that arises naturally when we let go of ego, embrace humility, and live with a heart open to life. Humility is not just a concept to understand. It is a way of living. It is present in the way we treat others, the way we speak, and the way we respond to both success and failure. A humble life is not a life of weakness or self-denial, but one of strength, freedom, and deep peace. Throughout this journey, we have explored how humility shapes our relationships, our ability to learn, and our capacity for inner peace. We have seen how it frees us from the burden of ego, allowing us to embrace life as it is, without unnecessary struggle. Humility is not about making ourselves small. It is about seeing ourselves clearly, without illusion or pride. It is about recognizing that we are part of something greater than ourselves, that we are always learning, and that every moment offers an opportunity to grow. Living with humility does not mean we will never face challenges. There will still be times when our pride is tested, when we struggle with criticism, or when we feel the need to prove ourselves. But with awareness, we can recognize these moments for what they are: opportunities to return to humility, to let go of what does not serve us, and to move forward with grace. When we live humbly, we experience life differently. We no longer feel the constant pressure to compete or compare. We find joy in the success of others, instead of seeing it as a threat. We appreciate the simple moments, rather than always chasing something greater. And most importantly, we find peace, not the temporary peace that comes from achievement or recognition, but a lasting peace that remains with us, no matter what changes around us. As we come to the end of this message, I would like to take a moment to express my deep gratitude. For those of you who have supported this journey through your kind words, your thoughtful comments, your likes, and your generosity, thank you. Your presence here, your reflections, and your engagement mean more than I can say. Whether through subscribing to the channel, sharing your thoughts, or offering support through super thanks, your kindness and encouragement are truly appreciated. May your path be filled with peace, wisdom, and the quiet strength of humility. And may each step you take bring you closer to a life of balance, understanding, and deep contentment. Thank you for being here.